All right, guys, time for another NZ set review. Today we're looking at NZ set 4, Colossal Calamity. It's me here again, Derek, and I'm joined once more by Nick as we go over this set.
Mhm.
And I'm going to let him start here with the first card, but it's the sort of, like we kind of start these with like what we're doing with the set or whatever. This one, it covered a couple of kind of big characters. It felt like some stuff that was missed in the show. The sort of colossal thing covered a couple of large characters, so that was there. I really like the Wrath of the Dragon movies. There's a lot of kind of Wrath of the Dragon content in this set that wasn't included. In this set, we introduced our second set of NZ Masteries, as you can see from this first card already on the screen here, as well as you can see by the title there, Hurdigard at the bottom. Finally gets an MP stack as well. But I'm just going to let Nick get right into this, and we'll see how it goes.
So as Derek said, this set's going to have new masteries in it, so a lot of the cards are going to correlate with the mastery. We're going to start with black as always. This is Black Calamity Mastery. It says your black style physical and energy combat cards that can stop attacks gain Raise Your Anger 1. When you play a card or use a card effect during combat that can discard one or more cards from your opponent's hand or remove cards in their discard pile from the game, you may discard the top 3 cards of their life deck instead. Okay, so let's start with the first part here. So this puts anger on your blocks, basically, right? And generically, yes, that's what it does. It puts anger on your physical energy combat cards that stop attacks. But what it also does is adds anger to your offensive cards that can stop attacks. Everybody knows what Black Body Destruction is. It's one of the staples for every black deck. Black Body Destruction can stop a physical attack. So it will always gain Raise Your Anger 1, even if it's thrown as an attack. That's super useful effect. Another big one is Black Turning Kick. Black Turning Kick's an energy for 5 that also can stop a physical. It always automatically has Raise Your Anger 1. So this would gain it an additional Raise Your Anger 1. So it's basically a 2 anger card at that point. So what this mastery's design is to basically help with the anger that black doesn't really have. We know Boo Saga Mastery exists, but it's hard to gain too much anger with that mastery. So this is a way to kind of defensively gain anger just by playing your normal cards. The second effect for this, when you play a card or use a card during combat that can discard cards from their hand or remove cards from their discard pile. Notice it says can. You don't have to. If they have 0 cards in their hand, you can still trigger this ability. If they have 0 cards in their discard pile and you go to remove something, you can still trigger this ability. So this has kind of become one of the main mill masteries in the game. There's a couple of MPs that really take advantage of this, that lean into the mill strategy. And that's kind of what you're doing here. You're going to play a defensive game with this mastery, and you're going to try to mill your opponent. Mill is very strong in this game. It's damage that can't be stopped or prevented, which is very good. So this mastery's opened up a lot of new archetypes, a lot of new black style decks, which is real fun. If your deck is generally like a gain 1 level, maybe 2 level type deck, this mastery's really good for that. And then there's a lot of effects in black that care about discarding cards and removing cards and things like that. So you can go into like a turbo mill deck where you're just trying to mill them out quickly, or you can just use the mill incidentally to do some extra damage with cards that maybe aren't all that powerful on their own, or maybe have a lot of utility, but maybe don't have the utility when you throw them. Majin Buu's Heel Kick, for example, is a very strong card. Removes 5 cards from your opponent's discard pile from the game. Well, if they don't have the cards that you're worried about in their discard pile, you can just use this to mill them instead. So there's a lot of power related to this mastery. It's created a lot of new archetypes. It's kind of just a different way to play black but still playing most of the same cards you would have already been playing.
Yeah, and one of the things that the masteries in this set will do is they all tried to take one of the things that the color doesn't really do and either create something, like make it do something, or just kind of focus on a new angle. Excuse me. This one of the first things, with Nick mentioning your blocks get anger, it's notice that it isn't a May Raise Your Anger 1, it's that they just have it now. So if you're a deck that doesn't want to level, if you want to just be like a straight like camp deck or whatever, you have to be careful with playing some of the like classic card, like playing a buffer block. gains you anger now. Playing Body Destructions gain you anger. So you have to be a little bit careful on the cards that you're going to run there. If you don't want to level, you have to look into playing more of the like freestyle blocks so that they're not black to get blocks off of, or to get blocks that way, but not anger. So that was just a cool way to make players like run slightly different stuff in their deck than they normally would. And then, you know, Nick was mentioning with like certain MPs being good with this and being able to convert like a deck or a discard pile searching effect into a, you know, into mill. There's MPs that like just do that kind of all the time. There, you know, Gohan Bookworm is one that gets played a lot with Calamity, where you search their discard pile for 3 cards and remove them. But now you can just make them mill 3 every time you enter combat. So there's just like a lot of neat things you can do, and it's almost like every time I see someone play this mastery, they're playing it with another new deck that I've not seen yet, and I just think it's really exciting every time I see one. It's cool how many decks have been made with this mastery. That takes us to our first styled card that's not a mastery. We've got Black Foreboding Weather. Now this card says, if you declared a Tokawaza, when entering combat, you may reveal this card in your hand. If you do, your opponent removes the top 3 cards in their discard pile from the game, and then it stops a physical or energy attack and gains 4 power stages. So, I mean, like Nick said, a lot of the cards that are printed in the set will also go with their mastery. This one would too. Yeah. If you are, you know, willing to reveal this block to your opponent so that they know you have it, you can either mill 3, you know, discard 3, remove 3 cards in their discard pile from the game, or turn it into mill 3 from the mastery. It's also a card that stops an attack, so it gets anger and it gets you stages. There's just a lot of things that this can do, and even if you're not playing it in Calamity, it still has like some function. Getting 4 power stages on a block is cool. There are some energy decks that will play this. It's tough because there are a lot of great Omni blocks in black, so it's tough to find a spot to be like, this is the one I want to pick over the other like obvious good ones. But there are a couple ways to use this, but most of the time this is going to be, as clear by its design, a card for Calamity Mastery. And I think it's pretty good in that deck.
Yeah, so one notable thing here is that Calamity Mastery does specify it has to be a physical or energy combat to gain the anger.
Yeah, sorry.
This card actually doesn't gain anger on purpose, so that if you want to play a Calamity deck that's just a mill deck, that's more of a drill mill-based deck, this is the block for you. Buffer block or eruption, all of the staple blocks in black that are omnis are physical and energy combats. So that's why this is kind of a combat, why it sticks out. That way, if you're in a deck that does not want to gain the anger, you can play this instead. And you can be all in on your mill package with your drills and whatever else you're using to set up your mill package. And that's when I've seen this card shine. It's when you're playing a Calamity deck that does not want to gain anger. The 4 stages is great. Now, your opponent's going to see this coming. A little annoying, but that's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, your opponent's gonna assume you have a block anyway. I mean, otherwise you're not gonna be able to do anything about what they're doing. So this card's been great in specifically those decks. I mean, it's very direct and narrow for what it is, but you know, the decks that want it, it's gonna feel great. The next card is Black Nightmare Drill. So this is a non-combat, of course, and it has a parenthetical that says you may reveal this card in your hand when entering combat. If you do, discard it and discard a card at random from your opponent's hand. So there's a lot to kind of take in with that before we delve into the card a little more. This obviously can trigger Calamity, but most of the time when you got random discard, you're going to want to use random discard. Random discard is very strong. The best thing about this card to me is that you can play multiple copies, and then if you have one in play and you draw this one, it's not dead. So the problem with style drills is always that the second one's dead. This one's not. So you know you play you get your first Nightmare Drill in play. You draw this on your turn. It's like, man, this is not great, but you can still enter combat and just discard it to hit whatever card your opponent kept. So that's pretty good. Or if your opponent enters on you, you can, or you just pass and you hold this, and if your opponent enters on you, you can get a random card from their hand. And random discard is very strong in this game. So the effect on the card is your opponent's attacks deal -2 stages. Cards in your opponent's life deck with printed endurance lose their endurance. As we've seen from Black Exertion, making things unpreventable is very strong. Obviously, making them lose endurance is not totally unpreventable, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to the same thing. And your opponent's attacks doing -2 stages. Black can get in those spots where you don't always have a lot of stages to throw your energy attacks. Most black decks are hybrid decks that play energies and physicals. So, just a little bit of a little bit of reduction on the damage from your opponent's attacks is always useful ability.
Yeah, there's another card that came out, a set after this one. There's the Janemba personality stack, and his thing is like when you use your endurance or play cards with endurance, they do stuff. This is a cool little like fun tech against that, and that all their cards lose endurance, so none of that works for him. So that's really neat. But there's other stuff like, Nick mentioned using this as you just have it in your hand. Yeah, you can play the drill portion of it or whatever, and it's cool that once you get one down, the second and third copy are still useful. There's neat like use cases for that where so you're playing black king cold or something, and your opponent enters on you, they have to discard a card off of the king cold effect, and then you reveal this, or you discard this, and then they discard another random card. You can just hit like a huge chunk of stuff out of their hand before they even get to start the turn. So I think this is a really neat card. It's definitely used in like very specific places. It's not like your standard just black drill to throw in a deck or whatever. But I think the decks that you'll play this in is decks where you're going to play 3 of it, and it's going to feel good when you have it. That takes us then to Blue Enlightened Mastery. This says, when you play a blue style card that can lower your opponent's anger, you may raise your anger 1 level instead. Or if your opponent's anger is at 0, once per combat you may raise your MP to its highest power stage and draw a card. So, first thing I want to cover with the importance of, can there, is like against your opponent's like Goku Sensei or whatever, you still can't lower their anger. Goku Sensei has always been really strong against blue, and this is still the case. But it is a card that can. It's not necessarily, does right now. It's just a card that can lower anger. So you can't lower their anger with it, but you can convert that anger into raise 1 instead. So you still have... so basically what it means is you can't mess up your opponent's Goku Sensei strategy with your blue deck, but their Goku Sensei doesn't just like turn off the positive part of your Sensei or your mastery either, which is pretty good. But basically this card just turns your anger lowering stuff, which sometimes doesn't do anything, into anger gain, and creates a leveling blue mastery, even like an MPPV blue mastery, because you can get a lot of, most blue cards lower your opponent's anger in some way, and this just saying, I'm going to raise 1 instead. Notably too, it's not, if lower it 4, raise 4, it's if an effect would lower it any number of anger, you can instead just raise it 1. So you can replace Blue Sledgehammer's lower 4 with raise 1. Sometimes, too, your opponent will just be at 0 when you try to use this effect, and instead of raising your own anger, you can power up to full and draw a card. That part is, the end of the sentence, but is so important. Getting a full set of stages and drawing a card once per turn for basically free is really, really strong. And there's a lot that this mastery has done and has created, and it is, in addition to a couple of other blue cards that have been made, like catapulted blue into competitive status, to the point where I think Blue Enlightened is, I think, one of the better decks that exists. This mastery is so good that you can do so much with it. You can lower your anger if you need you can lower your opponent's anger with your blue cards like they do if you need to handle anger, which means that your red matchup and stuff is still as good as ever. But if you don't need to mess with their anger, you can raise your own, level up and get your own effects out of it. You can try to race a red deck if you need to. You can be racing but lower them like on a pivotal anger. If they're at 3, you can put them at 4 or back to 2 so that a 2 anger card doesn't level them. Stuff like that. There's so much utility you get out of this mastery for something that's as simple as just raise your anger, maybe draw a card. But it does so much to make blue a playable color.
Yeah, it's also brought a bunch of cards from Score's history that were previously unplayable into playability. Basically, any card that says raise your anger one, lower your opponent's anger one is now a 2 anger card, which is pretty nice. Cards like Blue Evasion, which is just a physical block that raises your anger one, lowers your opponent's anger one, being a 2 anger card now, has made its way into decks. Blue Stance is, of course, the most well known. Energy for 5, raise your anger 2, lower your opponent's anger 1. Okay, well, now this is a 3 anger card. There's not a lot of 3 anger cards in this game. So the MPPV strategy is definitely one of the cooler things you can do with this deck. But, as just kind of a fair, mid-range, hybrid beats kind of deck, this mastery does that real well. It really defends against everything really well, and it's really in a good spot overall. It's definitely one of the strongest blue masteries. It's also the blue mastery that, like, if your deck doesn't have a mastery that you're, like, sold that is the right mastery for your deck, you can just put blue and light in there and feel good about it. If you're not all in on one of the other masteries and what they're doing, this is like the generically powerful of the masteries for blue now. So it's in a good spot. It's definitely a mastery that if you've played blue at all, you've probably at least dabbled with this mastery. It's very strong. It's fun to play. It gives you a lot of good decision points. It's good against most other decks. It's fairly good. It is more of a standard mastery, in my opinion, than a tough enough mastery because of the interactions with Goku Sensei. But you can still play it in tough enough, and it still feels pretty good. I mean, your opponent's anger being at 0, even if they're Goku Sensei, they level up. It sets their anger to 0, and you can cash in right then. So there's a lot of sequencing that comes with playing this right, but the payoff is great. Drawing a card, powering up to full is a great payoff. The next card is a very, very powerful card, Blue Colossal Throw. So it has Transform. It is a physical for +3, lower your opponent's anger 1 level. If successful, search your discard pile for a blue card that is not Blue Colossal Throw and place it into your hand. You may only play Blue Colossal Throw via Transform once per combat, removed from game. So, real quickly, this is one of the best, if not the best, blue card in the game currently. Transform is a powerful mechanic, as we've discussed several times before. Physical for +3 is kind of whatever. The anger lowering is also kind of whatever. But the big part about this, the if successful, this gets you any blue style card. So it doesn't have to be an attack like Axial Kick. You can go get a block. You can go get, you can go get a lot of choices. If you play this from your hand, you can get a blue physical combat card and then transform a Colossal Throw in your discard pile. Because this doesn't say you can only play 1 per turn, you can only transform 1 per turn. So if you have 1 in your hand, you can still get 2 activations, you can string some damage along. This card is very strong. It does what it wants to do very, very well. This is kind of a balancing thing for, Red Axial Kick being so strong, and all the styles are kind of getting one of these effects, where the effect is, do attack plus get another attack from your discard pile. You'll see with others, other colors and stuff are also getting these kind of effects in later sets. But this card's incredibly good. It also has Throw in the title, which is kind of the blue keyword. You'll see that a lot of the blue cards care about Throw, and a lot of the blue decks end up playing things like Majin Buu's Chokehold to pay off on the throws. So, yeah, this card's outstanding. If you're playing any kind of physical deck, any kind of hybrid deck, you're going to play 3 copies. If you're playing an energy-only deck, you might still play this card. That's kind of how good it is physical for +3 in an energy-only deck is still probably good enough to play.
Yeah, for as much as this card has done for the color and for how incredibly strong this card is, there's not a lot that has to be said. Like, we all know that Axial Kick is a 3 of, like, mandatory in every deck that can play it. Except for, maybe a straight energy beats deck or something. This card is just Axial Kick, but you can play it from your discard pile, and it gets you more cards than Axial Kick could. It's great. Blue is worse than red, was worse than red. And so this card was a little better than Axial Kick. That was kind of the point. But, yeah, this is one of those needs no introduction. You read the card and you're like, oh, that's good. That takes us to Blue Kamehameha Blast, another card that is just fantastic. It's an energy combat card with Endurance 2. It's a focused energy attack. Raises your anger 1, lowers your opponent's anger 1. Then, if successful, discard up to one non-combat or ally in play. So, like we mentioned before with the mastery, there's a raised one, lower one. You can turn that into just gain 2 anger if you need to. Then it has a parenthetical that's really important too. If this card is discarded from your life deck, so like milled, because same set as mill, or used for its endurance, and your opponent's anger is at 0 when it happens, you can put this card into your hand instead. So sometimes this just gets milled off the top of your deck for a card effect like your opponent using a Calamity deck, or maybe you just had to discard a card from your deck to use a card effect like a Bubbles Drill or something. There are times where that just like puts a card from your deck into the discard pile. Sometimes it's this, and if their anger's at 0, it just goes to your hand. And blue, as we've been talking about this whole time, is really good at putting your opponent to 0 anger, and so there's a lot of times that this just happens. And worst case scenario, if it doesn't, it's still got endurance too, and still stops, still counts as 3 of the life cards of damage you're taking. So that's pretty good. The split up anger, raise 1, lower 1 is super versatile and enlightened. You can lower 1 if you need to, or you can get the 2 anger. And then it gives you, it is, albeit if successful, but it does give you another access in blue to hitting a non-combat or ally from the table, similar to Blue Betrayal, but as kind of an energy version. It is successful, but it's also because it can add to your hand. It has a bunch of other utility too. This card is super good, and just like Colossal Throw might be a card you play in an energy deck, even if you're a physical deck, you're playing 3 blue Kamehameha Blasts, and if you're not, you're just doing it wrong. This card's so good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I play this as 3 of in every blue deck, no matter what my deck's doing. The if successful effect of discard non-zero allies is so good just all the time. It being focused is obviously valuable because people have don't have focused energy blocks, as we say on every one of these. If I'm playing this and I'm looking at my hand and I'm in a spot where I know I'm going to take some damage this turn, if I tend to focus more on getting my opponent's anger to 0. That way I have the ability to get this back, because there's a lot of value in that too, right? So like if I'm looking at a choice as do I want to get my 3rd anger or do I want to set them to 0, but I know that I can't stop the energy attack they're about to throw at me, I tend to lean more into let's just put them to 0. That way if I do hit this, I can go get the Kamehameha Blast to my hand. So this kind of changes a lot of the way you should sequence your turns, which is kind of fun that a card that's not even on the battlefield can do that. But it's a very powerful effect. I think this is an auto 3 for me in every blue deck. So I don't really have any more to add to it other than that. Okay, so next we're moving to Namekian, and this is Namekian Dragon Mastery. So once per combat, after making a successful attack with a Namekian-styled card, if you have no Dragon Balls in play, search your deck for a Dragon Ball and place it into play. The chosen Dragon Ball loses its power until the end of turn. If you have 1 or more Dragon Balls in play, instead you may shuffle a Dragon Ball you control back into its owner's deck and search for a different Dragon Ball and place it into play. As long as you control 1 or more Dragon Balls, you can in combat. Okay, so when you read this, it's obviously a lot of Dragon Ball text, which generally means that it's going to be a Dragon Ball deck. Well, it's not. This is a deck that wants to attack, and it wants to put pressure on your opponent, and it wants to use the power of the Dragon Balls to draw more cards and get more attacks and do more damage. So this is definitely a unique way to play Dragon Balls, which is great. It's a unique way to build a deck as well. You need to be focused on trying to hit 1 attack every turn. The balls you can play with this, it's interesting because to me, Earth Balls are probably not the premier ball to play with this mastery. I like the Namekian balls or the Dende balls better. The Namekian balls have multiple balls that draw cards, which is super valuable. Drawing cards is good. And they have the hate balls, which are the alt ball 6, alt ball 7, turn off senseis, turn off masteries, that kind of thing. So you can really use the flexibility to kind of set up what balls are really good in the matchup, or if there's no balls that really stand out as being excellent in the matchup, then you just draw cards over and over. You put ball 3 into play, draw the ball through your discard pile, and the next turn you shuffle ball 3 back in and go get ball 1 and draw cards till you have 3 in your hand or something like that. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this mastery. I think between this and with the power of the Namek balls or Goku's Dragon Ball Quest, going with the Dende balls, like the goal here is to just get a bunch of attacks and do a bunch of damage. I'm not saying you can't play a Dragon Ball Victory deck with this mastery. I assume that there's a deck somewhere that exists that works. I haven't seen it. This taking away your ability to end combat is kind of hurtful for Dragon Ball decks in general, which is why, generally speaking, you won't play this as a Dragon Ball deck. So this is if you like playing Dragon Balls, this is a very cool way to play Dragon Balls. What this mastery does, the first part of the effect about getting the ball and it losing its power, that's just if you struggle to get your first ball out, you can go get your first ball turn 1, and then the rest of the game you're able to use the second part, the good part of the mastery, cycle Dragon Balls, get card effects, draw cards. I mean, you can play this against like MPPV. You could cycle ball 2 to lower them personality levels. Like, the versatility that this mastery provides is really fun. The decks that you can build with this mastery are really, really interesting and really unique.
Yeah, I mean that's the perfect way to phrase this card. It just takes like a classic like Dragon Ball style and like flips it on its head. You have to you have to play your deck so much differently than any other Dragon Ball deck, but it does let you still do some of the really cool stuff that a Dragon Ball centric deck would do, but keeps you engaged and fighting the game, which I think is actually really cool, which is really fitting for like a Lord Slug card, where he uses it for youth to then go beat Goku's ass. So it's a fun way to utilize the Dragon Balls for sort of like an active win condition as opposed to a more passive one like most Dragon Ball decks do. As Nick said, there are a lot of decks that have been built in the Dragon Mastery that can really loop, putting the ball in, taking it out, putting one in, putting it out. There's the Dragon Punch from another set that will move your Dragon Balls around. Like, there's just a lot of different things that have been printed and just that exist that let you kind of keep looping through the different ones. You can kind of tech out the one you need, or you can kind of just replay you can play ball 3 2 times or something. So there's a lot of ways to really abuse this in cool ways. I think that this mastery is still sort of under realized. I think there's a lot more strength here than the representation that it's gotten, but it is understandably kind of a complex mastery to like wrap your head around. There's a lot of words on it. The word Dragon Ball is on the card like 8 times. It's just it's tough to kind of piece sentence by sentence like what this card is doing together. But I think if you sit down and get it, there's a lot of things you can really do to make like a very interesting play style that you're not going to get out of any other Namekian deck. That takes us to Namekian Dual Orb. It's an energy attack that does 4 power stages of damage. It costs 1 power stage to perform. If you control 2 or more Dragon Balls, this attack stays on the table to be used 1 more time this combat. If successful and you declare it Tokuwaza, gain 2 power stages and shuffle the top card of your discard pile back into your life deck. You can have up to 8 copies of this in your deck. So it's an energy attack that does 4 stages. Namekian does have a number of energies that do stages. That's just kind of one of the things they do. So this leans into that a little bit too. And then costs only a stage, and then if successful, it gets you 2 stages. So it gets you enough stages to throw the other 2 if you need to, or the other one, I guess, and still come out ahead if you don't get hit again. It also puts a card back into your deck. It shuffles it notably too. So there are cards that care about if you've shuffled cards into your deck, like Namekian Crash, that will let you now add cards to your hand if you've shuffled in cards already this combat. This card is a good way to start that process. And then having up to 8 copies of it in your deck means A, you can have a ton of this, but B, it also has 8 in the power box, so there are a couple cards that have been printed for Namekian that care about that. You'll see them in some later sets, but this now is, kind of searchable and triggerable off those kinds of effects too. So there's a lot of versatility to this card, and it obviously with having to have 2 Dragon Balls or whatever, it's often best in the Dragon Mastery. unless you're just playing like a pretty committed ball strategy. Otherwise, it's not often that you're like not on a ball victory deck and just having like two random balls on the table consistently enough to have like this effect go off. But if you're playing a deck like Dragon Mastery that gets you the one and then grabs another and then cycles them, and you're just sort of like sitting on this 2-3 Dragon Ball threshold kind of thing all game, this card's great there.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clearly a card designed for the Mastery. It's costing one stage is not that big a deal. As Derek said, the shuffling the top card in your discard pile back in is more valuable than it initially seems in Namekian in general. So if you're a leveling deck, you're going to be able to take advantage of things like Rage Drill and the 8 copies with Rage. So there's plenty of ways this card can be a multi-anger card. It's also just a double attack, so that it gives you more of a chance to get through one of your attacks for Dragon Mastery. It's pretty pretty simplistic card. It does one thing and it does that thing well, and in those decks it feels really good. So the next card up is a Namekian Colossal Grasp. This is a physical for 4 life cards. If you declare Tokawaza, you can raise your MP to its high stage. If successful, you may shuffle a Dragon Ball in play into its owner's deck. If you chose a Dragon Ball you control, search your life deck for a different Dragon Ball and place it into play, removed from game after use. So when we talk about looping Dragon Balls, these are the kind of cards that do it the best, right? So this is a physical for 4 life cards, which is not nothing, not a nothing amount of life cards. And if successful, you can do the Mastery thing. So what this card leads into is a lot of scenarios where you can do the Mastery thing twice. So you can shuffle your Dragon Ball back in, go get a different one, use its effect, shuffle that back in with your Mastery, get a new ball. So you can turn, let's say you've got Ball 7 out to turn off their Mastery, Namek Ball 7. Well, you can shuffle it in, get Ball 3, draw the bottom 3 cards of your discard pile, shuffle it back in, put Ball 7 back out, they still don't have a Mastery. So there's a lot of cool little combos with stuff like that you can do with this. You can also just use this to rejuvenate a whole bunch of cards with a bunch of different Dende balls, or you can use back-to-back draw cards. Let's say you save this and this is your last card in hand. You throw this, you go get Namek Ball 1, you draw until you have 3 in your hand, so you draw 3 cards, and then you shuffle this back in and get Ball 3, draw the bottom 3 cards of your discard pile. Now you have a 6-card hand, and you had 0 previously. So there's a lot of cool things this does. I do think that overall the floor is high enough that you can play this in a lot of other decks too. Physical attack for 4 life cards, raise your MP to its highest power stage is good enough to play in a lot of decks. The people play Namekian Dash, which Namekian Dash is obviously probably a bit stronger than this, but in the decks, the energy type decks, 4 life cards is better than 5 stages. So there are a lot of random decks that could play this just for the raise your MP to its highest power stage, and maybe you only have 2 Dragon Balls in your deck in those decks. And if you get to trigger the second part, obviously it feels strong, but if not, that's okay too. This card's been super sweet. It definitely does feel like it's mostly for Dragon Mastery, but there's a lot of other cards this is good against. Nail, who is released in future sets here, would play this card. It does not do base damage, so it doesn't use the pat, so there's some value there. Card overall is like I said, it's fairly strong. It's a card you can consider in a lot of Namekian decks, and it's an auto include in Dragon Mastery decks.
Yeah, I think Nick really hit it on the head there. It's obvious, just like the last card, it's kind of obviously for that deck, but it does have some other versatility. I am a big fan of physicals that do life. It's the win con damage. You can hit for, you can B and B, and who cares what your physical attack table says? You're going to hit for damage that's like actually relevant instead of taking them from 8 stages to 4 or something. So this is just a kind of a cool card there in that sense too. I don't think there's really a lot else to say about this card. It's neat where it's neat. You're not going to play it in everything, but that's good. I mean, in a lot of cases, I say this after showing you guys those blue cards, but in a lot of cases, NZ cards are not designed to go into everything. They're for like a specific deck, for a specific weak spot, whatever. And this is obviously for the decks it belongs in. It takes us out of Namekian into Orange, and this is Orange Evolution Mastery. It has a parenthetical that says when your MP advances or lowers a personality level, your drills are shuffled into your life deck instead of discarded. That already is really good for Orange. They have trouble with that, where leveling them is a good way to beat an orange deck. This just means you don't just straight lose your drills. But that comes in very important with the rest of the card. You cannot win by MPPV. When entering combat, you may remove 8 orange-style cards in your discard pile from the game to advance the personality level. During your defender defense phase, you may discard an orange-style non-combat card from your hand to stop a physical or energy attack. So we'll start from the top. No MPPV. Sure, that's fine. When entering combat, remove 8 cards that are orange from the game to advance a level. So this is a leveling orange deck, which is, like I said at the beginning of the video, a new thing for orange to do. And the second sentence here, as an orange deck, the good orange cards are typically drills and nons and stuff like that you build your kind of board state strategy around. But historically, as you know, if you want to beat an orange deck, one of the good ways to do that is to just enter on them often, because they're going to draw their 3 cards and they're going to hit like drill, block, and die. This says, well, if that's what happens, if you just draw and you get forced into combat and you draw some cards, you're like, well, I've got 2 drills in my hands, or 2 non-combats that are orange, whatever. I can at least throw them away to stop an attack. It's also not once per turn, so you can do that with as many as you have. Now, on paper, that sounds really, really strong. Like, oh man, I have a mastery that just sort of gives me like pseudo infinite blocks. And kind of, yes, but it does have to be orange. So a lot of the non-combats that you're going to be playing in a deck, non-combat specifically, are freestyle. And then even a lot of the drills that you play are still freestyle. You still have your champ drills, and you still have your 20s absorbing drills and things like that. So the number of like actual orange ones that you're playing becomes really relevant if you want to take full advantage of that part of the mastery. If you want to like load up on orange nons and orange drills, this is a way to do that and have some benefit for it while still being able to use them for what they're for. But most of the time, what I think this mastery is used for more is to just level when you need to. You don't have to have anger or whatever. You just, took some damage or played enough cards, and you get to level. And then if you draw like 1 drill in combat over the course of the game, you get like a free block out of it. That's closer to how it's used. But you can build a deck that leans really heavy into just playing a bunch of those and just having them turn into blocks. But the problem is then you're losing them. You're losing the usefulness of them being cards on the table if you're just throwing them away to block an attack. So it's kind of a give and take of what you want to do with it, but it does give you a little bit of a safety net against some of the kind of more dead hands that an orange deck could have. This deck works really, really well if you have a stack that like wants to be on a specific level. If you want to, like, I want to get to 3, and that's what I want to do. This deck will let you do it fairly effectively. You do still have to get to 8 orange cards in the discard pile to advance, but if you take a little bit of damage, you can then next combat go to 2, and then kind of repeat, go to 3, and then from there set up your strategy. It takes a little bit of like figuring out what your deck really wants and which MPs are going to be like best at utilizing that. But when you do, just having a leveling system built into your mastery that isn't reliant on anger is very cool. It's not like Aura Clash or something where you have to gain 6 anger or whatever, so a Winter Countryside doesn't mess you up. You can still just get a whole level out of it. So there's a lot of thinking that goes into where you want to build this, but it's made for some really interesting decks.
Yeah, I think the key, like Derek said, is that you're going to want to play this when there's a specific level you want to be on, right? Generally, if you have a level 2 or a level 3 that you really like, this is a good mastery that'll get you there. You're probably not playing a lot of anger. A, it's in orange, and B, you don't need to, because the mastery is going to take care of your levels, and you don't want to get messed up once you get there. I mean, I think that like something like Vegeta Settle Down level 2, that's an insanely powerful level. Like this is a card you could consider for those kind of decks. Basically, just a shell to get to a really strong level 2 or level 3. And then having the backup of, oh, I drew too many nons, which orange always plays a lot of nons, to stop an attack to keep you alive and stuff is very beneficial as well. So, Derek kind of covered most of it, but I think this mastery is very targeted and specific towards, a deck that wants to be on a level 2 or a level 3 specifically. Alright, so the next card for orange is Orange Defiance. It is an energy combat. It stops an energy, and if you're level 2 or higher, it stops the next energy as well. It has a little parenthetical. When entering combat, if you control 3 or more drills, you can discard this card from your hand to advance a level. If you do, you cannot win by MPPV for the remainder of the game. So you got your drill set up, and you're wanting to get to your level that we talked about earlier, the level that's strong. You can discard this to get there. On its floor here, if you're a camp level 1 deck, you're never going to play this card. It's not any good. But if you are leveling, this quickly becomes the best orange energy block in the game because orange doesn't have any good energy blocks. So if you are a deck that is going to get the level 2 via, maybe Anger, via maybe Explosive Wave, or via this Mastery, then this quickly becomes one of the more interesting energy blocks you can play. Stops an energy and then stops the next energy means that it takes care of focused attacks. It means that your opponent can't just throw a physical the next turn to get away from it like they can the old Saiyan blocks from the Saiyan Saga. Like, this is always going to net you 2 energy blocks, which is super strong. This card's pretty simplistic. There's not a whole lot to talk about with it. If you're a deck that's going to be on level 2, that's going to level in one way or another, this is probably going to be your token energy block for your deck. If you're a camp level 1 deck or something like that, you're probably not going to play this card.
Yeah, I mean, this is another sterling example of there are cards that are for something, and this is one of them. It's if you've got a deck that can set it up, this is very cool. And then just having if you're a deck that's going to level ever, this is a pretty standard, solid energy block. I think this card actually sees less play than it probably should. In that there's, I think it's just one of those that's kind of slept on still. But part of that comes from there just still aren't a lot of orange decks that are leveling. It's sort of counterproductive to the strategy of building up a wall of drills, right? So there's just not a lot of decks that think about doing it. But I think that this card and Evolution Mastery and stuff like that open that possibility up so much more that I think it should be being played more than it is. That gives us then Orange Powered Strike. It's a physical combat card that says physical attack doing +4 power stages of damage. Raise your anger 1 level. If you have no orange style drills in play, search your life deck for an orange style drill and place it into play. If you have 3 or more orange style drills in play, the first time you use this card this combat, this attack stays on the table to be used 1 more time. So, physical attack for +4, pretty decent damage. Raise your anger 1, also good. If you have no orange style drills to play, go get one. Now that is a secondary, so you get to do that before you do the damage. What this is for is this is for orange physical decks, and almost always you go get orange Joint Restraint Drill, which means that this is a physical attack for +8 now. And if you're playing Orange World Game Saga, because you probably are, because that's the orange physical deck, it's now a physical attack for +10. Which is huge, and this card is fantastic. It's setting you up for more, for extended beats from your orange physical attacks because of its ability to get Joint Restraint Drill, and also because, like I mentioned with the last Mastery and card, sometimes you just have orange drills on the table because that's what you do in an orange deck, and if you play this later in the game after you've set up multiple of your cards, if you've got a destruction drill out and a halting drill and a joint restraint and stuff like that, you just get 2 uses out of this card, which just means you get 2 physicals for +10, or we'll say +6, but if one of those drills is joint restraint, which it probably is because that's what this is for, you're looking at double +10s. This card is super, super strong and is one of the reasons to play an orange physical deck at this point, I think. Notably, it doesn't have any endurance like most of the physical attacks do in orange, but it does so much for the archetype, and so much of like the success of an orange physical deck is how quickly you get your orange draw and your strength drill on the table, and how often and how long you can have it there. And this card is just this card just says we're going to have that card.
Yeah, the biggest problem with orange physical has always been that they don't have any card economy, so they don't draw a lot of cards. Yeah, you get your drills, and you can set up your drills and things like this. But this ability to use this attack twice is incredibly strong. You're gonna just naturally find yourself with a few orange drills on the table a good portion of the time. And like Derek said, if you have no orange drills, you just get to go get orange joint or strength drill, which is the reason to play orange physical. So this card's insanely good in that specific deck. If you're on orange physical, World Game Saga, more than likely you're going to play 3 of this. Is what it is. If you're not, if you're Energy Build or one of the more controlled decks, obviously this isn't for you. So again, a very targeted card here that does one thing really well, but it does do that thing really well. You could play this in an evolution deck as well. You level up, you shuffle your drills back in, play this, go get your drill, set right back up on the next level. So there's some value there too. But overall, this is definitely a physical beats card that goes in a physical beats deck, and you're going to want it in those decks. The next card here, we're moving to red, and this is Red Explosion Mastery. So Red Explosion Mastery says your energy attacks cost -1 stage to perform to a minimum of 1. Your energy attacks deal +1 life card of damage for each successful red style energy attack performed that combat. Once per combat during your attack or attacks phase, if you have 3 or more anger, you may set your anger to 0 and raise your MP to its highest power stage. So first line, energy attacks cost -1 to perform. One of the problems with the red energy deck from Score is that the only mastery is the World Games Mastery, and there's no reduction on energy costs. So this fixes that problem. Making your energy attacks cost -1 is just insanely strong. It's the reason that I think that Trunk Saga Mastery is better than Cell Saga Mastery in orange, because the cost reduction is a super important big deal. The buff is really interesting with this mastery because it's not like innate. You don't always get the buff. You have to work for it a little bit. Now, with that said, once you do put in a little work for it, it scales really well. There's a card that most red energy decks will play called Red Repeating Flares. This kind of Repeating Flares is a score card from Fusion Saga that is kind of the poster child for what this deck can do. It's an energy for 2 that you get to use 3 times. So that it scales up with the mastery, and then most importantly, after you've hit the red style attacks, to get the buff, your attacks don't have to be red. So if you hit them with 3 red Repeating Flares and then throw a Heat-Seeking Blast, now it does 7. So that's a good really way to balance it. You have to balance out which attacks you want to throw in what order. They have to be successful, so you have to make sure you're hitting the right attacks as you go. But it's a really cool way to stack damage, a really beneficial cost. The last part of the card, once per combat, if you have 3 or more anger, set your anger to 0 and raise your MP to its highest power stage. The Red World Games deck, which is the previous energy deck, has always been a pulverized deck for me. That's the way I like to play it. So I kind of avoid playing a lot of anger racing in those decks because I want to camp level 1 or whatever level with the drills. This deck's kind of the opposite. You can level up with this deck and feel good about it, or you can just set your anger to 0 to power up to full. Energy decks all the time have problems with getting knocked to 0 and then being stuck. So on this mastery, you'll play more of your anger heavy package. You'll play things like Red Blocking Hand and things like that that'll gain you multiple anger. And then you kind of have a backup if you're not in a good turn and you're playing against a physical deck and they knock you down to 0. Maybe you can power back up to full and get some stages back, get some defense back. Maybe you're taking less damage, or maybe you do this after they're done beating you and you power up to full and then you hit them with 4 energy attacks. So there's a lot of versatility this card has. I do think this card kind of single-handedly brought red energy, onto the battlefield. This is probably my favorite mastery from the set. I think red energy is a very cool style, a very underrepresented style, and this card has been great every time I've played it.
Yeah, I love this mastery. It's really interesting. It's super fun to use, and just opens up red energy a lot. From where it was before. Red World Games is fine at doing it, but this one really revitalizes the options that you get. Just being able to anger as a resource kind of thing, like we've mentioned, and we'll continue to mention with some of the cards as we go along. It's nice to have a little bit of control over using that for something other than just leveling, but it's nice too when you can level if you want to. It's a neat change of pace from your kind of standard pulverize and some drills energy deck that you would normally have had. This lets you do it a little bit differently, or I mean, you can still lean into playing it just about the same and just getting a free power up to full once a turn kind of thing. Really interesting mastery, very fun, very thematic to, you know, Kaioken and stuff like that too. Is just cool. All right, Red Mighty Mask's Secret. This is one of my favorite NZ cards, period. If Mighty Mask is your main personality and you declare to Tokuwaza, you may remove Mighty Mask from play and play a Gotenks fusion card of the same personality level from your Sensei deck. And then in parenthetical there it says this is still considered fusing via Fusion Dance. That's important for how long you can stay Gotenks. But typically, to be Gotenks, you have to play as Trunks, or you have to play as Goten, or Goten, and then play out the right ally, get the Fusion Dance, set it all up, then do the fusion. It's slow, it's hard, takes a lot of cards. It also means you've got to play, like, Kid Trunks is pretty fine. Goten is, like, kind of underwhelming in some ways. So you've either got to play an underwhelming MP or one who's, like, fine, and then play a slow non-combat card and an ally to go get a Gotenks. That's hard to do, and it means that Gotenks doesn't see a lot of play, despite how cool he is. Mighty Mask, on the other hand, is, like, not a particularly remarkable MP stack. He's just, you know, he's fine, he's sort of cool or whatever. He's one of the Capsule Corp stacks, and he, his effects, want him to declare a red Tokuwaza. So we were like, well, what if we just let Mighty Mask be the way Gotenks happens now? So now you can just be your Mighty Mask deck. You can play red Tokuwaza, which means you're going to likely be gaining anger because red cards. And then you can use this on whichever level you're on to go get the corresponding level Gotenks. Which means you can play, right away you can play a Gotenks level 1 without having to have had a non-combat or an ally. This is combat, so you can play it in the middle of combat. Or you can, play your typical red anger game, get to 2, and then go to Gotenks level 2, which is also very good. Or, for almost the first time ever, you can play Gotenks level 3 if you're just on your level 3. You, before, would have had to have played Kid Trunks Teenager, and then up through a full 5 stack of Trunks with Trunks the Battler at the top, and then a Goten ally at level 3, and then you would have had to get to at least level 3 on your Trunks stack, and that's as if the fusion wasn't hard enough to do to begin with. It was impossibly hard to do it that way. So Gotenks level 3, despite being a really cool ultra rare, just never sees play because it's borderline impossible to do. This card has been super good at letting Gotenks 1 or even 2 or even 3 just be in play, and that's very cool. You do run a little bit of a risk with playing Mighty Mask in that if you don't get to do the Gotenks thing, Mighty Mask isn't particularly great, and also he's just a 1 through 3, so you have to weigh the options of am I going to try this in standard? Probably not. I'm probably going to go tough enough with this so that I don't just get cheesed out of a win there, but the beatdown element that Gotenks can bring to the table means that you can play this in standard. It is just a little bit more risky because there are other MPPV decks and stuff to contend with, but you can just lay some serious damage with the 2 physicals or 2 energies or the level 3 as well. All 3 of the levels output an absurd amount of damage, and this deck just makes a very cool new way to play Mighty Mask, which is a dude who doesn't go in card sleeves. So it's been really fun to see Mighty Mask decks on the table. It's also been really fun to see Gotenkses all over the place, and that's been really, really neat.
Yeah, so the most important thing about Fusion is that it's terrible. It's always been terrible. Score did not do a good job with Fusion at all. This card is it's a really special place for me. It's kind of when I got into NZ, when I joined the league, was during this set. This is kind of the card. Like when a new person comes in and we talk about what is the actual point of NZ, like what is NZ trying to do. This is the card I show people. To me, this should be what NZ is about. We are taking a personality who sees no play, Mighty Mask, and we're taking Gotenks, which is a set of incredibly cool fusion cards that everybody knows and most people like. And if you've got nostalgia for this game or you got nostalgia for Dragon Ball Z, like Gotenks is a sweet personality. And the fact that he is basically unplayable is wildly, awful for me. So this fixes that. This deck, I think, is fairly good. I think, like Derek said, Mighty Mask is a little underwhelming, but Gotenks is so good that it kind of does offset that a little bit. This being a combat card is sweet, which means you can use it anytime. It's not a non. You don't have to draw it, put it in play, set it up, all that crap. All of the Gotenks power levels are so strong that even if you draw a second one while you're already fused, just throwing this for a final physical when you're in F or G is just like perfectly fine. If you're playing this in red decks, so I don't worry too much about the 1 to 3 cheese in standard because red is really good at doing that too. So you can kind of just play your anger cards and level up yourself, and maybe you're the one doing the cheese, which is fine. I think this is a very fun deck to play. Obviously, you're going to play 4 of this in your Mighty Mask decks. This gives you a reason to play Mighty Mask. Mighty Mask's abilities are a little weak. But, if you look at what they actually say, his level 1 is a focus physical for +3 that raises your anger 1 and gains 4 stages. Like, that's not awful. His level 2 is a modifier. That's not awful. His level 3 is bad, but if you get to level 3 and you fuse with level 3 Gotenks is one of the best personality cards in the game. By a good margin. It rejuvenates a lot of cards. It's a big ol' attack. He's very, very strong. This card presenting a reason to play Gotenks to me is amazing. Gotenks is so fun. It's such a strong card too, so the payoff is there and the payoff is worth it. And basically, it's a red physical deck, right? So the better red physical gets, the better these cards get, the better playing Gotenks feels. I really like this card in the Buu Saga Mastery. I think he's pretty useful about making his attacks focused and getting through damage. Gotenks can make his attacks focused by discarding a card. So sometimes you get to Gotenks and you're on level 1 and your opponent times or whatever and they're going to hit you with a bunch of attacks. Well, I have this random red Mighty Mask secret that I can't use now. I'll discard it to my power to make Gotenks attacks focused and knock you to 0. So, there's a lot of value there. I really like this card. I really like Gotenks. For those of you who want to play Gotenks, this is the way to do it. And to me, this is kind of the core of what NZ is supposed to be.
Perfectly said.
Alright, so next up we got Red Colossal Flame. So this is an energy attack for 3 cards, raise your anger 1. It does have Empower 3, so energy for 6, raise your anger 1 on its floor. Not bad. Attach this card to your opponent's MP. While attached, your MP gains when entering combat, raise your anger 1 and gain 3 stages. Discard this card when you advance a personality level. You can only have 1 copy attached. So, just like most energy decks, the biggest problem they always go through is, if you enter on your opponent, which is always a little scary, because if you end up at 0, they can just enter on you next turn and you don't have any stages. So this card is great about making sure you have stages, right? So when entering combat, gain 3 stages. It's a very powerful effect. If you still have your Victory out, it can gain 5. You'll gain 5 stages, which give you a little bit of room to work too. The anger part is also super relevant, mainly for explosion, because it can get you to that 3 anger mark to where you can, maybe you take 1 attack and then you power right back up to full. Basically, all explosion decks will like this card. Will want a copy or 2 of this card. I kind of like to play this card even in Red World Games decks, or a lot of decks like that. I play this in MPPV decks. It kind of just has value in a lot of generic decks. I know the damage output, energy for 3, raise your anger 1, is kind of like meh. It's kind of not a lot to that. But the ability to continuously gain anger in stages when entering combat is super valuable. And if you've got a way like Explosion or Red Channeling Drill to repeatedly reset your anger to 0, you can just keep this card in play. And you can just gain an anger in 3 stages every single combat over and over and over.
Yeah, this one's tough. I think this card's really, really cool, and I really like the sort of like theme of it. You use the attack, and then you attach it to your opponent's thing, and then you gain some stuff. It's the idea is that like they're on fire, and while they're burning, you're profiting from it. And this card is, I think this card's really neat. It's a little bit narrow, but if you're a deck that wants to be using this, and you can keep this attached, especially if your opponent's just not an anger deck, it's just going to be there for a while. You're going to get a lot of mileage out of this. It is one that is not always good, but when it's good, it's great. That takes us out of red into Saiyan, and takes us to Saiyan Teamwork Mastery. Once per combat, during your Defender Defends phase, you may discard an ally you have in play to stop a physical or energy attack. Your Saiyan-style attacks deal +1 power stage of damage for each ally in your discard pile, to a maximum of +5. At the end of your rejuvenation step, you may place an ally from your remove from game pile on top of your discard pile. So, I mentioned at the very beginning of this video that these masteries are typically making the color do something they don't do a lot of, and Saiyan ally deck is something that there isn't a lot of, but it feels like there should be. There's a bunch of Saiyans. The Saiyans work together to take over planets and stuff. The Saiyan heroes fight together, Goku and Trunks and Vegeta and Gohan and stuff. So it just made a lot of sense to have something where you're working with your allies. Or, maybe it's Gohan and Videl. Who knows? But once per combat, turning one of your allies into a block is really cool. It's, obviously having your ally on the table to use their effect is better most of the time, but a lot of ally decks will play lighter on the blocks anyway, because your allies have stages, which means that you can redirect to them and take, they sort of serve as like pseudo blocks themselves. But this letting you turn one of those into a block if they're, like, say they're already at 0, or say it's like a huge energy attack you really need to stop or something like that. You have the ability to get a little bit more versatility out of those allies, even on top of the additional actions they net you in a turn generally. But also your Saiyan style attacks getting an extra +1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 damage is really, really strong. We know people play like Black Trunks Saga, right? Because it's just +2/+2 all the time. If this is saying you're getting maybe +5, that is a lot. You do, of course, have to set up the right number of allies to make that happen. But if you're playing, something that's really like an obvious MP for this is Cell, and you got your Cell Juniors out, and you've got a whole bunch of them in play because you tend to, because that's what happens with Cell Juniors, then your attacks are doing a whole bunch of extra damage, which is good because a lot of times your Cell is in B or maybe C if you get to your level 2, and then your you can use your Searcher Cell Junior to go grab one of your Energy Cell Juniors or whatever. You can discard it as a block. You can play the other Searcher effect to bring back the one that you discarded, and kind of keep looping it that way. There's some really strong stuff there. And then if for some reason you get your allies removed from the game, say they get prep crashed or something like that, or blue betrayaled or something like that, you can once per turn get one of them back to kind of keep the cycle going. As long as you've got ways to dig it out of your discard pile, you'll continue to have access at least to one of them a turn.
So this mastery, like, the MP choices for it are kind of a little thin, but the ones that could work for it, like Cell, are very good at it. King Vegeta is the one that pops into my head as the kind of teamwork mastery staple MP. He does a lot of cool things. As far as your ally deck, generally your ally decks are going to be allies that have personality powers. I really like the Uzarus with this build, and you get to play the Saiyan style attacks that do multiple attacks as well. So you'll see shortly some of the cards we have designed for this that I think are great in that deck. the getting your allies back from the remove from game is very strong. Whether it's sell and you can get them back from your discard pile, or you're playing unexpected ally type cards to get them back, that's very good. Also, just putting them in your discard pile to pump up your sand attacks is also pretty good. So this mastery is quite good. There's a lot you got to remember. It's kind of a lot of bookkeeping type things with this. You got to know how many are in your discard pile. You got to remember to put one from your RFG back in, and making sure that you get the maximum out of your discarding effect to stop attacks. But this mastery is quite cool. It does sand so much differently than all other sand decks, which is something I really enjoy. So the first card that kind of pairs with this is Sand Power Burst. It is Sand Heritage only, energy attack doing 3. It has Empower 3, so energy for 6. If you declare a Tokuwaza and you have no allies in play, you can get a level 1 ally from your discard pile and to play at 3 above. So very straightforward card here. You have no allies in play, you go get one that was either discarded or removed and then put back into your discard pile with Teamwork Mastery, put into play at 3 above. And if you do have an ally in play, it's just an energy for 6, which is perfectly fine. This card is, there's not a lot to talk about with this card. It's very straightforward. If you're playing an ally deck, or if you're playing a deck like, I don't know, like a Gohan MBS. I like this deck in there. You can play your Chi-Chi and you can play your Icarus and your 2 or 3 allies, and then you can use this to get them back into play. So there's a couple of times where this card feels really good. It's very niche. It's very narrow as far as when you want it, but when you want it, those decks it plays really well in.
Yeah, this is one of those that is. This card supports that mastery. There's not a lot of other decks where you're going to play this, but when it's good, it's good. I used this. I ran 3 copies of this in my Saiyan Turles deck because his reliance on the Crusher Core is so strong. So I was playing like Saiyan Cell Saga, like you would with the deck that wants to draw cards and attack, and so I was playing this to go get the Crusher Core back if I lost them. In the worst case scenario, it was an energy for 6, which I didn't hate. But that deck is one of those where you don't have a lot of allies, you just have one that you're like hyper reliant on. And this did a good job of something like Gathering of Heroes or something like that would have got it back too, but was also instead an attack. Speaking of Turles, Saiyan Turles is Kill Driver. It's an energy attack, Empower 3, so it could just be for 7 if you needed it to. If successful, for the remainder of combat, if a card effect would require you to discard an ally you control from play, you may remove an ally in your discard pile from the game instead. So, energy attack for 7, easy. So we go back to the mastery, which says discard an ally to stop an attack. This says you can do that with ones already in your discard pile. So now each of those allies that you get rid of, you can turn into basically 2 blocks. So you can discard one from play to stop an attack, and then you can RFG that same ally to stop another attack. And then, because of the second part of the mastery, that removed from game ally, one of them, will get put back into your discard pile and be ready to be brought back into play next turn, or to be used off of the another one of this effect. It is a Turles card, so you could play 4 of it. Funnily enough, I don't actually think there's like a Saiyan Turles ally teamwork deck that like exists yet or anything. So there's not really a lot of situations where you're going to do that, but the Turles part isn't particularly relevant there, it turns out, but the card itself I think is kind of nice for the mastery. Just letting you get kind of double duty out of the first part of that effect, and then getting to trigger the second part, which comes up a lot less often than normal decks. You get to use it more actively. I think is a neat card. It's definitely kind of only for that deck or whatever, but I think it's neat in the deck.
Yeah, it's very narrow. It's specifically for a teamwork deck, and it's fine in a teamwork deck. So you're going to play it in your teamwork decks most of the time. You're not going to play it in your other decks. It's very straightforward. Like a lot of NC cards are very targeted for that reason. They're for one mastery. They're for one spot. They're for one scenario to try to give a power boost, and that's what this does. So yeah, it perfectly fine card. Okay, so we are finished with our style cards, and we are going to move over to our freestyle cards. As Derek has pointed out multiple times, he's a big fan of the Wrath of the Dragon set. This card is definitely inspired from that. So this is Dragon Fist. This is a physical combat card. It's a physical attack doing 7 life cards of damage, which is a lot, just period. You can remove a styled or Goku name card in your discard pile from the game to add its base damage to this attack. So, notably, base damage is pat damage if the attack does pat, or the life card damage if the attack does not do pat. Damage from this attack cannot be prevented. If used by Goku, you can discard the top 7 cards of your life deck to make this attack unstoppable. Limit 1 removed from game after use. So on its floor, this attack most of the time is going to be a physical for 7 that you're going to remove some energy attack that does 4 base and make it do 11 life cards. 11 life card physical attack that can't be prevented is incredibly strong. The if used by Goku effect is fairly rare, but I like it a lot in like Goku ball decks as a hat target. And you're going to mill the 7 even if you're near death or whatever, because normally you're going to have Dragon Balls in your deck. So milling 7 when you have multiple Dragon Balls in your deck is not going to kill you or anything. And this is kind of a guaranteed ball steal. If this is a physical attack for, even if it's just for 7, but especially if it's for 11 or more, they can't stop it or prevent it. It's just a big old heat-seeking blast type card, right? So, this is a card I think should see play in most beatdown decks. It does not. I do not know why. I play it in a ton of my decks. I don't understand why people have not come to light on the power level of this card, because I think it's insane. Every time I use this card, I feel like it's insane. If you're playing a hat deck, I think that this should almost always be one of your hat targets. I think that if you're playing Goku, this is an auto-include in every Goku deck, no matter what your deck is doing. It's just one of those cards, man. Sometimes cards don't catch on for whatever reason, and even though their power level's insane, every time I throw this against an opponent, they kind of it does what now? It does, wow, it does what? How much? And, but then they don't put it in their deck the next time. So I don't really have a good explanation for you. When we talked about Frieza's Deception as a card, when we did its set review, I said repeatedly, just put this card in your deck. Put this card in your deck. I feel the same way about Dragon Fist. If you are a beatdown deck, or if you are a Goku deck, or anything of that nature, put this card in your deck. If you're an energy deck, put this card in your deck. They're going to be prepared to stop energies, and then you just randomly throw this physical. You remove some styled energy that does 6, and it does 13 life cards and can't be prevented. Put this card in your deck.
Yeah, Nick and I share very similar sentiments on this. This card is awesome. I mean, people play Heatseeker, right? I mean, Heatseeker is an unstoppable, so it's a little bit different, but you can make this unstoppable. But even just unpreventable is still very good. And like Nick said, this card is, for being a physical attack, is super good in an energy deck, because you have energies that hit for bigger base damage generally too. So you can okay, this physical, instead of doing 7 life, is I grabbed a 6 life energy attack, so now it's hitting for 11 or it's 13, sorry. And there's so much you can really pile that up, and I think it's shocking to me that this card doesn't see more play. Nick did made a really good point with Hat. If you're, when you're playing Hercules Magic Techniques, most of those decks have the couple cards that they're trying to bring out to do something important, but then they also tend to have a couple of kind of Hail Mary targets in there too. This one should just be there. Sometimes you're just oh, what's going to work right now? I've stared down to their hand and they don't have a physical block. I'm going to hat. Okay, well, let's just hit them for 11 unpreventable life cards. This is just good. Goku makes obviously best use of this because he's, it's his move. But anyone can take very near full advantage of Dragon Fist, and I think more decks should be playing this card. I think it's one of the most criminally underplayed cards in all of NZ. So, Celestial Halo. This card, I would imagine Nick will say the same, sits on my list of cards Red Mighty Mass Secret of cards that are in my little portfolio of things I want to show people to show them why NZ is cool. So this says limit 1 per deck. Before the first turn begins, if your MP is a Celestial Fighter, you may search your life deck for this card and attach it to your MP to place Grand Kai from your deck into play at 3 stages above 0. While attached, your main personality is considered to have 4 levels for your opponent's MPPV conditions, and your attacks deal +1 life card of damage. So, the Celestial Fighters, there are 6, 7 of them, and almost all of them are not very good. You can make an argument that like Moriko is pretty good or whatever, but most of them are like not great. But this card does a lot to elevate them. You can say what you will about like start and play cards. I, for one, am a fan, but this one starts and play, and you just, all right, I'm going to play as the Celestial Fighters. We're all dead because that's kind of the point of the characters. So we all have our halos. And you get Grand Kai out because Grand Kai's there to see his little tournament happen. So you start the game with an ally in play, an ally that is giving you a damage buff. You then also get to have a 4th level, sort of phantom 4th level, for not getting cheesed by 1 through 3s, because a lot of the Celestial Fighters were just 1 through 3s, because that's how Score made like side characters into stacks. And while you have this card, you get an extra little life card buff out of it, in addition to the damage buff from Grand Kai. There's just like a lot of little knobs that this does to bring a little bit more power level to some generally weaker MP stacks. And we've talked about, or we will, you'll see later, a future Trunks ally for future Gohan. And one of the strengths of that card is that he's just an ally that can't go away. Granted, he doesn't do the typical stuff that an ally does, but just having him present for the stages that he had and things like that was super strong. And just getting your Grand Kai out is good too. He's in Z, which is having access to a Z friend is very good. And I mean this card is awesome, and it's another one of those cards like Red Mighty Mass Secret that is like a single card that turns on like a whole new kind of strategy of stuff, in this case for a lot of MPs, and just brings a lot of power bump to those stacks.
So like Derek said, this is a card that I talk about like Red Mighty Mass Secret with. To me, this is the point of NZ. This is what NZ should be doing. I love this effect. I love the Celestial Fighters. I like the lore. I love the all the Celestial Fighter stuff in the anime. For gameplay purposes, this card is fairly good. So it brings out an ally, like Derek said, that's NZ, that gives you more stages to work with. And between the ally and this, you get +1/+1 on all your attacks, which is useful because, again, most of the Celestial Fighters are just not very good. Obviously this incentivizes you to play Celestial Fighters. Unfortunately, most of them, this is still not enough incentive to play. Alibu and Moriko are the 2 that have seen some play. They are 2 of the better ones. But what this does do is it helps us in the future, too. If we get some more support for maybe some specific ones, then these cards existing could bump up those personalities even more. There are personalities like Chappie Chai and Faraug, which do some very unique and interesting things that, maybe with one more support card plus these cards existing could bump them up into something reasonable. Also, the most famous Celestial Fighters, Pycon, his stack is awful, but assuming that we eventually get around to something to help Pycon out, Pycon will be somebody that would benefit greatly from these effects. The MPPV thing to stop yourself from getting MPPV cheese is super beneficial because, again, most of these guys are 1 to 3s because, score doesn't balance well. So, that's kind of where we're at with this card. Like, it gives you a fun way to play Celestial Fighters. We do a lot of side events in the league as well where you might get some weaker MPs to play with and some various things like that. So these cards have been propping up a little bit more and seeing a little bit more action, which is always fun. But overall, this card is great. This card is one of my favorite things about NC is effects like this. And I want to play the random nonsense characters, and these cards that allow you to do that a little bit more competitively are great for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you brought up. It's is the sort of side event presence of characters like this. We do have like our main organized play, like competitive circuit or whatever that we do, but we it's fun to get to play the fun side characters too. So we do the side events with different little deck building rules or things that kind of let you bring some of the lesser known characters to the table. And so not every NZ card that gets printed is, supposed to like redefine the meta or whatever. There are some of them that are like, this is just kind of a fun flavor gimmick or whatever. And those cards I think really shine in those events where we have lower stakes, if you will. It's kind of the same way that you get, in a Magic set or something, you get a card that's like for Commander and not for Standard or whatever. There are some times that there's an NZ card that's like, yeah, I mean, you could play that in like real Standard organized play or whatever, but it's maybe a Celestial Fighter is probably not quite there as a strength level. But if you're just playing like pickup games just for fun, or you're playing in a little side event where the stakes are a lot lower, um, it's just fun to play fun characters, and this helps those characters shine a little bit more.
Okay, up next we have Begrudging Allies Drill. This is a non-combat. It's kind of a split non-combat because depending on if you're a hero or villain, it does a different effect. So if you're in piece a hero, the first time each turn an ally enter or leaves play, you draw a card. And if you're in piece of villain, you can discard up to one drill or ally in play instead. You can only have one in play at a time. So obviously, this kind of effect, you're probably going to want to be an ally deck, or you're going to want to sensei this in against an ally deck. Drawing a card is very strong. So if you have, if you're playing an ally deck that has a decent amount of allies and you can consistently draw a card, every turn or close to every turn, it's a pretty reasonable choice. If you're a villain, that means, a lot of times you're going to want to be defensive with this card. Discarding a drill or ally in play is a little bit more narrow of an effect, but if you're a villain and your opponent's an ally deck, you sensei this in, and then, they play an ally, and you can discard it, and then, something like that. So there's a lot of value here. It's an interesting card. I'm not sure, like, what exactly the decks are that really love this effect. I will say that in freestyle specifically, if you're playing a freestyle villain deck, like a Vegeta is kind of the one that pops into my head the most. There's not a lot of removal for things in freestyle, so this drill as a villain, as a sensei deck card against ally decks could come in really handy, hitting some drills, hitting some allies, things like that. But it is a little narrow in its effects, and it is a little hard to get working. But if you can trigger it a couple of times, you'll get your value out of it.
Yeah, I think this card is cool in the design space that it's in, of like it does something for a hero or something different for a villain. I think it would be cool to see more of that happen. It's something that I just like the space of. But like Nick said, it's one that it's on the lower level of cards that see a ton of play. It's just it's narrow in what it does. I do like his point about being like a freestyle Vegeta card or whatever. Some of the freestyle Vegeta decks will do gutter wallops and stuff into your level 2 and things like that, but other ones will like very intentionally stay on that level 1 Super Saiyan to keep looping the lurking or whatever. And if that's like the deck you're going to build, then this is a decent way to manage discarding things in play. If you have this on the table and you get to like discard one of your opponent's what's the word for that card? 20's absorbing drill. You're gonna feel better as the typical Vegeta energy beats deck. To get something like that off the table is going to be reasonable, and having just sort of a repeatable way to do that, that's good too. It's important that you've got some allies or whatever to kind of to trigger that or whatnot, but it's cool when it works. It's just tough to find the right spot for it, I think. So Gohan Super Kamehameha is our next card here. It's an energy combat. It's an energy attack doing 6 life cards of damage. Costs 4 power stages to perform. Has in power 4. If successful during your next attack or attacks phase, you may perform an attack with a card in your discard pile with Kamehameha in the title as though it had transform. Removed from the game after use. So, first things first, I have to talk just a touch about what this card is. So, if you've been around the game for a while, you might have and followed kind of like the retro space or whatever. There has been kind of a running joke since like the GT days of, well, even earlier because the internet didn't exist a ton yet, but of people saying like, no, I know someone who works for Score and they said this card's coming or whatever, and like that we were all 12, like we all said shit like that. Everyone knows kids who did that kind of thing, and so there was a conversation that was happening about that at one point in time, and one of our guys in our group here, his name's Brandon. He created this joke card called Gohan Super Kamehameha, and it was an energy attack that did 10 life cards of damage and cost 4 stages, and it had some joke about like this card's totally real, and it was like this big inside joke on this one dude specifically who used to get his feelings hurt about people not believing him about his fake card ideas or whatever. But it was fun to kind of finally get to like realize a 20-year-old in-joke meme into something that's actually in the game and is actually relevant. Energy for 6 is decent damage. Cost 4 is a lot, sure, but it does have Empower 4. Could be 10 if you needed to. So an energy for 10 that costs 4 is a little different. But if it's successful, getting to then trigger one of your Kamehameha cards as though it had transform is really good. There are some very strong Kamehameha cards, and there's specifically the Kamehameha that cares about all the other Kamehamehas you have in your discard pile. You do extra damage for each one that you have, and so having that sort of floating in your discard pile to pull out with transform, like it was in your hand, makes it a lot easier or more consistent finishing move target for that deck. This goes really well with a MP that we made in the next set, who was called Goten Family Kamehameha. He lets you have Kamehameha cards of every color in your deck, and he can pay for his energy, or he can pay for his stage cost of attacks with life cards. So he can basically do this for 4 life cards instead of stages, which is good. And you're just going to have a ton of Kamehamehas in that deck, and this is going to let you play. It's going to let you turn basically your discard pile into a toolbox of Kamehameha effects. And I think this card's very cool. The Kamehameha deck isn't played a ton, and I think it's still a little underexplored, but if you're playing it, you're going to play this, and it's going to feel good at like pushing you into the win con of that deck, which I think is cool. And I think it's really fun to get to finally realize into a quote-unquote real card the running joke that this game knows.
So from a gameplay perspective, obviously this is going to fit in the Kamehameha deck. It probably doesn't have a ton of uses elsewhere. Energy for 10 cost 4 is kind of a useful card effect if you're on an ally deck of sorts. Or if you're in a blue deck. If you're in a blue deck, that's another time I can see just like randomly putting this in your deck in order to transform blue Kamehameha Blast, because that card is strong enough that effect is worth it. So those are kind of the two spots for this. The Kamehameha deck is the obvious choice. You want 3 of this in your Kamehameha deck, no problem, no questions asked. I do like it if you are on some sort of blue ally deck as well. Like I said, the Kamehameha Blast is a powerful enough effect that you can get a lot of value out of that from this. But otherwise, energy for 10 is just a big attack, and the inside jokes notwithstanding, the card is reasonably powerful in specifically the Kamehameha deck. So the next card up is Bulma's Ingenuity Drill. This is a non-combat. It says cards that remain in play to be used an additional time this combat are considered Bulma name cards for card effects. And then card effects that say when Bulma is an ally in play are considered to say if Bulma is your main personality. So this set is one of the ones that did the best job, in my opinion, with targeting MPs that did not have a lot of use and giving them value. So this card is an obvious kickback to the, I think it's Kid Buu level 1 Bulma, which says prevent 2 damage from all your opponent's energy attack, and when a Bulma name card leaves play, your opponent mills 4. So this card was printed to kind of encourage people to try Bulma. It was printed early and no one tried it, and it kind of just disappeared into the wayside before one of our regulars put a black Bulma Calamity deck together that all it did was mill. It did not do damage, it did not attack, it did not try to get any value from anything other than milling cards, and it was very good at it. It made for a really fun and interesting deck, between the Calamity mill and the Bulma mill, and things like Bulma's looking good. When entering combat, your opponent discards a card. Well, they would say, okay, well, I don't want you to discard, I want you to mill, and this is leaving with Bulma in play, so you're going to mill from that too. It played a lot of cards that stayed into play again to be used to get more value out of the Turbo mill, which was a really fun and interesting deck. The other thing that's popped up recently is an orange deck based around the fact that orange has a lot of energy attacks that stay in play to be used an additional time. And, this orange is also very good at getting drills out, as we know. So orange would set up this drill with some of those other drills, maybe some damage buff drills, and, throw an orange scatter shot or another card like that stays in play, orange fist catch, that are now considered to be Bulma named. So you're getting mill value out of your cards that are also just double attacks. So there's a couple of cool ways to put this in a deck to play Bulma. I like that Bulma is now like a useful personality. Like I don't know that what she's doing here is top tier or anything like that, but it's certainly a fun deck, and it's certainly a deck you got to be prepared for. The mill plan is certainly a different way to attack Bulma, and she doesn't have a ton of name cards that are like outstandingly good. Although Bulma finds a drill with this in play, it's just a non-combat that searches for a drill. That's pretty reasonable. So a lot of these cards are pretty reasonable, and then Bulma's looking good. It's obviously incredibly powerful non-combat from Android Saga. So this is made for some new and interesting fun decks. I mean, again, this is what NZ is about to me. Is let's take this Bulma MP and make a deck out of it, and it's a super cool deck.
Yeah, this card was very, very effective at creating the Bulma deck we wanted it to. It's been made in a couple of colors, and both versions are, while very different each, are both very cool. And I think people are continuing to experiment with Bulma because of it, which is very fun. I think that's a cool level and a cool gimmick. It works nice too with the Calamity Mastery from this set, so you can kind of really full send the mill thing, which is it's neat when it works together with the set you made. But I just think this card's awesome. I think it's another in the pile of really interesting kind of single card support archetype builders, and I think it's done a really good job of it. Okay, so we have Gotenks' double lethal missile. It's an energy combat, energy attack doing 4 life cards of damage. If Gotenks is in play, you may discard all cards under your warrior sword. If used by Gotenks, this attack stays on the table to be used one more time in this combat, removed from the game after use. So, energy attack for 4 life means the floor of this is very, very low. But the cards under your warrior sword thing. So if you are unfamiliar with Gotenks or need a refresher, Gotenks' thing is that each turn you put a card from your deck under your warrior sword, and that once you get to 5, you defuse. That's sort of your fusion dance timer thing. And so this card says you use it, and then while your Gotenks is in play, get rid of those cards and stay Gotenks longer. Which lets you just keep up the pressure that a Gotenks is giving you. This card previously would have been real bad, because Gotenks was real bad, but obviously this would go into your Mighty Mask secret deck that we talked about earlier in the set review here. Having copies of this, while it's much more common to go into your Gotenks level, you can just get there and stay there longer. One of the things that sucks a little bit in this game about the defusing rules or whatever is that instead of you have to pull your fusion level out of your Sensei deck to fuse into it, but then when you defuse, it just leaves the game. It's removed from game. So you can't like put it back in your sensei and then fuse into it again later. You can't like redo the fusion dance. You just lose access to it. So this says, well, if you're going to fuse into Gotenks 2, you get to be him longer. Or if you're going to go into your 3 instead of losing it after a couple turns, you get to be on it longer. So if you can line it up to make it work, hold this and wait till 3-4 turns into your use of having Gotenks' timer building up, you can reset it and really elongate how long you can be Gotenks. The biggest problem with that is that Gotenks is really good, and if you need 3 or 4 or 5 combats to kill somebody as Gotenks, like something is going catastrophically wrong. So the like overall use case of this card is pretty low. It's like one of the more win more cards that we've made, I think. It's just like, if you're going to take the time to go into Gotenks, you're probably just going to win as Gotenks because you're Gotenks. It doesn't matter that you're not typically at risk of losing that fusion form or whatever. You're not at risk of running out of the time to do it. It's a double physical for 7 each, an energy for a double energy for that much too. Like, there's so much damage that you can pump out with him. You've got a huge physical attack table value for physical damage. It just piles up really, really fast, the output that you can make with the Gotenks level. You don't need this very often, so it doesn't see all that much play. But if you were really committed to being on the Gotenks form, as long as possible, I might see playing a copy or 2 of this in a deck. Maybe this is a card that you play, a copy of in your Sensei deck, and then, 2 hats or something to have an extra copy of. Like, there's just things you could do with it where there's like a home, but I don't think you play this all that often because being Gotenks is already enough.
So the one thing I'd like to add to that, because Derek covered most of it, is that because of the way fusion works, it's at the beginning of each of your turns. So if you don't enter, you lose an entire turn. So when you're building a Gotenks deck, you're very incentivized to build a deck that just enters combat every single time. When I can see some value for this card is if you build a Gotenks deck that maybe is more drill heavy. Maybe you're trying to buff up Mighty Mass so you're not as dependent on Gotenks, and then you can afford to play this card, because that way, if you use this card on your turn, and your opponents are likely not going to try to enter on you very often because they don't want to fight Gotenks any longer than they have to either. So, you're going to get 4 combats plus the turn you fuse with Gotenks, right? So the question is, if you end up passing 2 of those combats, maybe you can't kill them now. Maybe you don't have that ability to kill them now. So if you're playing a deck that's not as aggressive and not as, prone to entering combat, that's the kind of deck I would lean towards putting this in, because that way you can extend out the amount of time you get to be Gotenks. But if you're playing an aggressive, red beatdown deck with your Mighty Mask into Gotenks, you're probably going to enter combat 4 times after doing this, and you probably are not going to need this effect. All right. Last up for our regular cards, I believe, is Hirudegarn's Teleportation. So this is kind of a spoiler event for what's coming after this, right? So this is a freestyle physical attack or physical combat. It has Transform. It is Hirudegarn only. Stops a physical or energy. Raise your main personality to its highest power stage. Remove from game after use. So this card's pretty generic. I think that looking at it on its core of your question is going to be, why do I want to play this card? And the answer is going to be, well, you got to see what Hirudegarn does, and you will understand. So, Omni Block is fine. Power Up to Full is fine. Being a generic physical combat with Transform is pretty interesting. It leads you into playing some more unique cards. The one example I always give is Cell's Backslap. Cell's Backslap is a card for me that does not make a lot of decks. I think the power level is there, it's just a little too weak. It does tend to make my Hirudegarn decks more often because this card exists. So the freestyle physical combats that can set up to transform this, I mean, Gohan's Kick's another good example, right? You're going to play that in most of your physical beats decks, and sometimes the card just feels terrible. Well, turning it into a block will make it feel a whole lot better. Boost Fury is another, these freestyle physical combats that you kind of have to play because the game requires it. Sometimes them just being a block is very beneficial. And again, it's hard to explain exactly why this card is good in Hirudegarn until you actually see how his levels work, because he's a very unique personality. But let's just say that powering up to full in a Hirudegarn deck is something that's very valuable.
Yeah, that's a great point. The fact that this is an energy attack, or stops an energy attack too, means that you can do really neat stuff. Like you can throw away like a Python's Leg Catch that you would probably have had against an energy deck to have a block that you can actually use and things like that. So Nick hit it really well on the head with. It just makes you play some unique cards in the deck, which I think is cool. It is very important to know kind of how Hirudegarn works for this to really sell the value of this card. But a transformable Omni block that powers you up to full is really good. If that wasn't a Hirudegarn only card, this card would be played like everywhere, right? So it makes sense that it would feel good in Hirudegarn. So let's get into that stack. So here we've got our first level. There are 5 of these. So we've got Hirudegarn Dormant. If this card's in your MP stack, you can't win by MPPV. So just know that Hirudegarn can't win by MPPV ever. That's just this thing, and you'll see why very quickly. Level 1, each time your opponent performs an attack, raise your anger 1 level. So, getting sort of free anger just for your opponent, like playing the attacking game, is pretty good. You do, of course, need to play some of your own anger, because some decks won't attack you, and then you're just stuck on this level 1, and then your deck doesn't do anything, and that's bad. So you're not going to play a deck with no anger, because this isn't where you want to be, and you can't run the risk of your opponent playing a deck that will never attack you. But if they're going to attack you, like 90% of decks do, because that's how you win the game typically, you're just going to get a bunch of free anger out of this, and it's not once per combat, it's every time. So even on turn 1, they throw 3 attacks at you, that's 3 anger, you get 1 red Trunk Saga Mastery out of it or something, and it's a full level right there. So it's pretty common to just fly off of this level.
Yeah.
Which is good too, because as you can see from the B power level there, just not a great spot to end up stuck.
Yeah, you don't want to be here very long. So hopefully quick level up and you can get to 2 where things get a lot more interesting.
The level 2 is Hirudegarn Divided. It's representative of his lower half. He has a power that's a physical attack doing plus 4 stages of damage, and then if successful, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's life deck. So he obviously exists in the same set as the Calamity Mastery, where there's, which he's on. So he does lean a little bit into the mill strategy, but he's just a giant, big Godzilla monster. So he's just going to be dealing chaos, destruction damage, even without needing to do like regular damage. So he's just stomping around, breaking stuff, milling cards out of your deck. The important thing about Hirudegarn, and this is going to be a theme across all of his levels, is he has a parenthetical that says, when you gain anger, if your anger isn't 0, your MP loses 2 power stages to a minimum of 0. Attacks performed against Hirudegarn gain, if successful, raise your opponent's anger 1 level. Now, that is a card that is text that's added to your opponent's card, so it raises Hirudegarn's anger. So, what it says is, anytime your opponent hits Hirudegarn with an attack, he gets an anger. But also, every time he gets an anger, he loses 2 stages. This is a lot to keep track of, but it's a big flavor thing. In the movie, they're really struggling to defeat Hirudegarn, and Gohan's like, it has a weakness, and Goku says, yeah, intense emotions drain its energy, and that's when it can be attacked. So as it gets angry, it loses power stages, but that will level it, which will reset its power stages. So you just have to be really on top of both as the Hirudegarn player and as the opponent, knowing that for a couple of attacks you're going to hit it and it's going to take extra damage out of it, and that's good for you, but then it's going to level again, and that's very bad. So there's just a lot of figuring out what the right timing to hit effects is, and sequencing to make most effect of how to deal extra damage into a Hirudegarn player. And then as the person playing Hirudegarn, there's a lot of lining up attacks the right way so that you get anger in the right spot, so that you level, so that you don't get pummeled at 0 and things like that. he takes a lot of work to kind of get going and figured out. But you'll see as we go into the next level that continues.
Yeah,
One, I guess, oh, go ahead, Nick.
you'll see especially as you level up through this, Hirugarn is all about anger management. It's all about watching where your anger is, trying to control the different aspects of, okay, my cards raise anger versus my opponent's attacks, and maybe do I take an attack here so that I get an anger even though I have a block. There's a lot of back and forth and a lot of sequencing you have to do with Hirugarn. Hirugarn is all about correct sequencing.
Yeah, absolutely. You've just got to be. If ever there is an MP that you like have to be paying attention to, it's this one. You really can't like autopilot through this deck. There's like triggers on every attack of yours and your opponent's. Especially if when you gain anger off of your own cards, which I said you kind of have to play to get off your level 1, you're going to be lowering your own stages too. So you've really got to know when it's right to do that. What I was about to say earlier was, notably from that jump from level 1 at 1,000 power level, where he's just a little statue who can't do anything, this one hops to 2 million, which is, obviously a gigantic leap, all the way up into D, and you'll start to see his power levels jump a ton. He fights, Super Saiyan 3 Goku and stuff in the movie, so like he is a very strong character, and he's going to level through these stages pretty quickly. And the damage that he can bring with it is something you got to stay on top of. So we get to Hirugarn Fulfilled, jumping all the way to 4.5 now into E. He has a power physical attack doing 4 life cards, then discard the top 3 of your opponent's life deck. So unlike the last level where it had to be successful, it's now just 3 free extra cards. So it's an attack. It does 3 as a secondary, and then 4 life cards if it hits. 7 total. Pretty good as a power. His parenthetical is much the same as the last level. The only difference is that it switches from the loses 2 power stages to loses 3 power stages. So he is going to lose stages faster on this level, but he is now a much larger threat, doing a stronger level power. This is the level where Hirugarn starts to get to be a problem. The 2 is fine or whatever, but the 3 is physical attack for 7 life, is a very strong personality power, and it just keeps going up from there.
Yeah. The mill starts early and often here, and so with Hirugarn, when I'm looking at his power levels, I like to look at his lower power levels here. So he's in D at the bottom, which is super useful, because if you're throwing just a generic, you'll see you're playing a generic anger deck, to help work with him, physical +4 raise your anger 1, you're going to lose 3 stages immediately. So he's one of the MPs that it matters what his full range is. When you're throwing these attacks, you have to factor in, if the card has anger on it, all right, I'm going to lose the anger before we assess the damage. So does this change my bracket? Does this change my order? Does this change the way I want to do things? So there's, like I said, there's a lot of tracking and a lot of things you have to pay attention to with your Hirugarn, but the payoff is there.
So here we get into the level 4. This is one of the big payoffs of the deck. You'll notice that he's got 3.2 at the bottom, 5.8 at the top. So he's got a pretty wide range there, D into E. But now his power is raise your MP to its highest power stage. As we were talking about with his block before, getting to power up to full is really important in a Hirugarn deck. And then it just mills 4 off the top of your opponent's deck. They just discard the top 4 cards. Then for the remainder of combat, all of your successful attacks gain discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So you can really start, you throw this early to mill 4, and then you can set up your whole hand to mill cards out of their deck. You can throw it late and give up the couple of extra mills that you might have gotten to get a full set of power stages later in the turn. So that's important there. His parenthetical, same as the last one, actually, identical. He just loses 3 stages when he gets an anger, and then successful attacks against him raises anger. You'll notice here he has a power up rating of 6. As a personality that loses a ton of power stages, having a big power up rating is really relevant, and is also then becomes relevant to some deck building strategies. I have a version of Hirugarn that I played in Black Calamity, and I used Black Magic, which is a card that doesn't see a ton of play, but it just discards cards off the top of your opponent's deck equal to your PUR. So if you've got a Tokuwaza and you got a PUR of 7, it's just a combat card that mills your opponent 7. That's 21 cards of damage if you've got 3 of them in a deck, and you're up here, which you're going to get 2 fairly regularly. That's a powerful use of a underplayed card, I think. And this is the last of the levels where you can kind of where your track gig has to just be based on your anger and things like that. The final level and the payoff bomb or whatever for this stack is Hrudegarn Unleashed. His parenthetical switches now to 4 power stages lost every time he gets anger, but he is in 4.2 to 6.8. 4.2 is what? That's still E, so it's E to F now. Like Nick said, it's important to know what your bottom is, but he has a physical attack that has plus X life cards of damage, where X equals the amount of cards your opponent has discarded from the top of their life deck this combat. It discards the top 3 for sort of a free 3 at least, in case you haven't got any other mills this turn. But one of the things that you have to do with Hrudegarn, this is the accountant fans' favorite deck for sure. You have to be keeping track of your anger, and when it lowers your stages, you have to keep track of your opponent's attacks, which will now lower your anger. You have to keep track of the number of cards that you've been milling all turn, because if you were to get to level 5, you got to know how much damage this attack does. There's just a lot of things to pay attention to in this stack. We've made a little reminder support card that goes with this. That sits on the table, and it's got Goku saying the little quote about the emotions draining its energy or whatever, and it has a spot where you can track, you can put a dice to track how many cards your opponent's milled, just because there's so many things you got to keep track of. Having the little reminder message in front of you to be like, oh yeah, I'm losing stages and anger all the time. That's always happening. Got to keep remembering that. Got to remember, okay, they've milled 3, they've milled 4, they've milled 5, they've milled 7. Okay, I got to keep track of that. There's just a lot of mental gymnastics to go through to really full power this guy. But if you're one of those players who's got that kind of focus and can stay on top of all the triggers your deck is doing and things like that, Hrudegarn is really, really powerful. He has a huge physical power level. He's got a good all other than his level 1. His 2 is pretty good. His 3, 4, 5 are all very good. As far as their attack itself, and I think Hrudegarn is awesome. He's easily the most complex MP that NZ has made, maybe to a fault, but if you like a good, challenging deck, you've got to pay attention to what you're doing in. This is the deck for you.
Yeah, I like that he's kind of varied in his styles too. I've seen Calamity versions, I've seen Blue Enlightened versions, I've seen Red Unstable versions. So there's several ways you can also play him that are all fun and interesting. I would recommend starting early in the tracking of the life cards. You don't want to give away to your opponent that you might have a way to get to level 5 when you're on 3. So basically from the time I get to level 2, I am openly tracking the mill. It's no secret what he does, and it's no secret what the goal is, so that way you're not giving up any smaller advantages. If your or your opponent is on Hrudegarn, you both need to track the MP losing stages. It's very important. I mean, he does have a really high power level, but his power level at 0 is still 0. So if he's losing a lot of stages, then it takes away some of his pat damage. So you got to be a little careful with that. Overall, it's a very interesting and unique personality. He's very strong. The better players have done really well with him. His complexity level is kind of high, so he's not somebody I would recommend to somebody new to the game, or somebody who's maybe not new to card games in general. But the power level is definitely there for those people who can handle the complexities that come with playing a stack like this.
One deck that he's made that's pretty unique, that doesn't come up in a lot of other places because of how quickly he gets anger against other attacking decks. There's a deck that's been made where he gets to level, where he has 5, but he gets to at least level 3 and can play level 3 allies. There's a huge number of very strong level 3s that exist, and this is one of the few MPs that quickly enough and reliably enough gets to the level 3 to be able to really utilize having a deck full of level 3 personalities. I don't know that it's like, the best Hurdigarn strategy by any means or anything, but it is a very cool deck. And if you do get them on the table, they're very good. He loses stages a lot, so his allies turn on and off pretty regularly. So it just adds another level of like, oh man, what do I do against this Hurdigarn who's like, if I hit him again, he's going to level. Well, maybe that's good because then he can't use his allies anymore. Yeah, so there's a lot of thinking you have to do against him. There's a lot of thinking you have to do while you're playing him. He changes the way you have to think about the game immediately from the onset of the game. You have to be playing the game differently against a Hurdigarn deck. For some, some people think that's maybe not the best thing game state wise. Other people think it's really interesting. It kind of depends on like what your flavor of the month is for what you like decks and gameplay to feel like. But he definitely changes the way the game feels. He is a presence as soon as he's on the table. That's it. That's the last card in the set. That's the last card in NZ set 4 Colossal Calamity. Capped off by the Hurdigarn stack here. Thanks for riding out through another one of these videos. I know they're long. Every time we say this, thank you for your time. We'll be back in the near future with our NZ Set 5 Resurrection video, and we'll keep trucking right along. Thanks for hanging out, and see you next time.
So yes.